My name, much like my life, lacks distinction. Taylor. Just Taylor. Standing at 5 feet 7 inches with an average build, weighing around 135 pounds, light brown hair, and blue eyes, I blend into the crowd effortlessly. I lack the size for sports or the intellect to hide behind a geeky facade. Even attempting acting feels out of reach. My tenor voice falls short, I'm told. Without a girlfriend, I navigate through monotonous days, hoping for improvement, though it seldom arrives. Living alone with my mother in a modest cottage, our home became fully ours after my father's tragic demise at the store. Mom now manages the store during the day while I assist after school and on weekends. Following Dad's death, we relocated the store to a safer area, selling off our previous stock. Mom opted for a different kind of shop, one less prone to robberies, and expanded our inventory, leading to our current success. Initially, customers raised eyebrows at my presence in the shop, but as I turned 16, concerns were voiced about a young man working in a dress shop. While Mom shared these concerns, she didn't discuss them with me, only limiting my duties to the front of the store during opening hours. Then it occurred. A woman entered the shop, casually browsing as I manned the counter. Suddenly, she erupted, accusing me of being out of place in a dress shop and insinuating I was a pervert for working there. Despite my attempt to explain my ownership stake, she exploded. Mom intervened, urging her to leave, which she eventually did. However, the encounter shattered my already fragile confidence, prompting thoughts of retreating home. That evening, Mom and I discussed it, realizing I couldn't simply quit as we couldn't afford additional help yet. Mom's gaze drifted, and when she looked back at me, a mischievous grin adorned her face, signaling her idea, one I dreaded. I possess enough knowledge to sell clothes, but delving further holds no appeal. We can address this issue easily, Taylor B. We'll transform your appearance into that of a girl. It'll still be us running the shop, and incidents like today will be avoided. No. Mom momentarily let the topic rest, but I sensed it wasn't over. Right after dinner, as expected, she broached the subject again. This time, she meticulously highlighted every aspect of my appearance that could facilitate a transformation into a girl. Small stature, a slightly higher-pitched voice, moderately longer hair, an oval face, and so forth. She even delved into my lack of close friends, laying bare all my deficiencies. How could I argue? She was spot on. With no social engagements on weekends and school about to conclude, daytime work wouldn't pose an issue. She made it clear she wanted me to give it a shot, leaving me with the daunting question of whether I could pull it off and what I'd look like. Despite my reluctance, her persistent persuasion led me to reluctantly agree to a one-time trial. Mom designated Sunday for the experiment. Reluctantly, I accepted, recognizing our limited options. The woman who caused the scene held significant influence, and without some change, our sales would plummet. I reluctantly consented to the trial, but that was it. Mom stepped away briefly, and I retreated to the family room to distract myself with television. The following morning, after breakfast, Mom and I convened in my room. As I stood there in my briefs, she began applying a pungent cream all over my body. When the itching commenced, she instructed me to shower it off, wash my hair, and shave meticulously. Shave? A joke. My beard was hardly substantial. Following her instructions, I watched as the thin hair washed away, leaving my skin smooth. With resignation, I completed the regimen, wrapped a towel around myself, and returned to find Mom laying out clothes on the bed, including our best-selling dress. If we're going to do this, Taylor B., let's do it properly. Put these on. She handed me a pair of white nylon French-cut panties which rested high on my hips, clinging tightly to my midsection and butt, simple and perfectly appropriate for a girl of 16. Then came the bra, size 34A, one of the new push-em-ups. Once we had gone that far, Mom took me to her bedroom, sat me at her vanity, and began to dab and spread out the foundation. Then came the powder, which she let set for a moment before she brushed away the excess. As I watched, the mysteries of makeup grew a little less scary. Soft green with a light gray eyeshadow, then black eyeliner over and under each eye. Looking at my reflection, I felt my heart sink, because this was going to work. My plain face had been turned into that of a young girl. My hair was still damp, so Mom started putting in some rollers, using a gel of some kind as she went along. When my hair was a mass of pink rollers, she and I went back to my room. The first thing she did was use one rolled-up sock to stuff each cup of the bra, then she handed me a panty brief which I slipped on. The pantyhose sent a chill down my spine as I slid them up my legs, securing them snugly around my waist. I pulled a short slip over my head, followed by the dress, and then slipped into the low-heeled shoes. Upon turning to face the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Instead, I saw a young girl, not conventionally beautiful, but undeniably cute. The dress hem reached mid-thigh, showcasing plenty of leg, yet my first thought was admiration for their appearance. My bust line, neither too large nor too small, was subtly concealed by the round neck of the dress, yet hinted at more. With bare arms extending to the shoulders, they appeared slender. The dress cinched at the waist before flaring out at the hips. Swallowing hard, I followed Mom to her room, where she removed the rollers from my hair. As the pile of rollers grew, my hair transformed into masses of curls. After brushing it out, I bore no resemblance to my former self. Mom handed me a lipstick, and I applied it, coloring my lips a soft plum shade. Next came small gold clip-on earrings, her gold watch, and a ring for my left hand. Finally, she spritzed me with her perfume. As I gazed at my reflection, Mom stood behind me, grinning. I resembled an average to cute high school girl, not a cheerleader, but certainly not desperate. Now all you need is a new name. Taylorby sounds so childish? Ponder it, but let's head to the shop for now. Lost in the image of this unfamiliar yet familiar girl, I barely registered her words. Taylorby? Without hesitation, a name slipped from my lips. Janet. What a lovely name. I adore it. Shall we? Without further ado, she took my hand, led me to the car, and drove us to our shop. Anxious about being seen in this new guise, my worries were unfounded. Not a single person pointed, stared, or laughed. Whether that was reassuring or disconcerting, I couldn't tell. Once in the store, Mom swiftly began selecting skirts and dresses, piling them on the counter. I trailed after her, ensuring she didn't choose anything I disliked, even on the hanger. After about an hour, we left with a haul of 4 skirts, 3 dresses, a black purse, and various blouses and tops. There was no discussion about whether I would undertake this transformation. Both Mom and I recognized its necessity for our livelihood. She simply assumed I would comply and made sure I had ample attire. As I moved around, the soft fabric of the dress, the lingering scent of perfume, and the faint taste of lipstick enveloped me in femininity, a novel sensation. It wasn't unpleasant, just different. As Mom and I selected more clothing, she mentioned the need for additional undergarments and accessories, including 2 more bras and silicone forms if available. This required a trip to the mall, which suddenly made me feel less confident. Nevertheless, Mom insisted, adding a woman's wallet to my purse before holding the door as I carried our purchases to the car. In less than a few hours, Mom had managed to take away every bit of my manhood, replacing it with this girl I called Janet. As a gag, something to try, it was okay with me. Then we saw how I turned out. Mom told me that as long as I was careful how I walked, used my hands and arms, I would be okay. As she parked the car, I wanted to run away, but could not. This was the test. If I could walk in, buy bras and so on without any glance my way, maybe I could get away with this charade. Mom says it'll be easy, because most girls my age are still a bit awkward. Unfortunately, I don't know any awkward girls, but I kept in step with her as she and I walked into the mall, and then into the department store's lingerie section. I was in a sea of color, without a clue, but Mom diligently found the bras, and I was soon holding 2 in my hand. A package of panties in assorted colors, then she found a padded panty brief and took that. 3 pairs of pantyhose, another dress slip like the one I had on, then, at the counter, a pair of silicone forms in size A. As we were walking out, Mom pointed out the makeup shop, urging me to go in. I drew the line right there, insisting that we go home, and she gave in. I had done what she asked, now I wanted to change clothes. I took the new things to my room, ready to change into a pair of jeans and a tee, but I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself again. Unlike before, this girl would have a lot of kids, probably boys, trying to get her to go out with them. I looked so different that I really had no reason to worry about being discovered. It was my male pride. I'm the only boy I know of in our school that has worn a dress or gone outside wearing it. As I stood there looking at myself, I wondered how my life would change if I really did this. The more I looked, the more I liked what I saw. Becoming Janet could change my entire life, but if I look at it like Mom told me, as if this is a uniform for work, then everything will be fine. That's when I made the decision. It wasn't that hard once I saw myself dressed this way, then compared it to the way I looked before, and of course, the lack of laughing when we were in the mall. It was less a revelation than an acceptance of the obvious. I went in and took the lipstick, retraced my lips, and walked out of my room and down the stairs. I didn't feel ashamed of the way I was dressed, I felt liberated from the drudge I certainly was before. As soon as I made that discovery, my entire outlook about dressing as a girl changed. To make this work, I had to accept myself this way, and now I thought I could. Mom remained silent about my attire, and I stayed dressed accordingly for the remainder of the day. In the mornings, I adhered to my usual routine, donning jeans and a shirt for school. The coarse texture of denim against my smooth skin felt oddly different after experiencing nylons. Throughout the week, I followed my typical schedule, eagerly anticipating the start of summer break like everyone else. Each evening, although not fully dressed, Mom instructed me in makeup application and hairstyling. By the week's end, she deemed my efforts passable and informed me that I would begin working in the shop as Janet the following morning. As I applied makeup, I couldn't shake the realization that simply entering a store or mall was one thing, but working as a girl presented a whole new challenge. The thought of assisting customers while still being a boy in a dress unsettled me slightly, but Mom reassured me not to fret excessively, so I attempted to push those worries aside. Before bedtime, Mom applied cream to my skin once more, leaving it silky smooth. She also set my hair in rollers, though this time, I had to endure sleeping with them in a rather inconvenient task. Rising a bit earlier than usual, I adorned a shower cap, took a shower, shaved meticulously, then returned to my room to prepare for my debut. I stepped into the panties and pulled them up, then slipped on the padded panty brief. The silicone forms were still in the boxes, and I did not want to try attaching them on my own, so I asked Mom to do it for me. She applied the adhesive, then pushed first one, then the other against my chest, holding them for a moment before she let go. When I looked, I had a chest. There was almost no sign of a seam. I pulled on the bra, securing the front hook and watching as the cups held my newest assets firmly, pushing them up a bit. Mom left and I went into the bath to do my makeup. I had figured out that less is more, meaning that the less makeup I wore the more natural I looked. Rather than a lot of eyeshadow, I used just the light green and gray again, but brown eyeliner. Then I went in and stepped into the short slip and the pleated tan skirt. The blouse, light blue, fit me just right now, and as I tucked it into the waistband of the skirt, I pulled it down snug, highlighting my chest. I wore the brown flats with gold button earrings and the same watch and ring. Mom removed the rollers and I brushed out my hair, now curly all over. I liked it. Back in my room, I added some perfume and pink lipstick. The night before I had transferred everything from my boy wallet to the new one, put it in my purse, added the lipstick and a brush, then walked out of my room and into the kitchen. I poured a coffee while I waited for Mom to get ready. Upon her arrival, I noticed she was dressed similarly, sporting a tan skirt paired with a blue blouse, our hairstyles mirroring each other's. After pouring her coffee, we departed for the shop, knowing today was crucial. Surviving this day meant potential continuation. Being caught, however, spelled trouble. Mom's strict instruction was clear: I stick to the front, leaving her to handle tasks in the back. I never contemplated deviating from this rule. As soon as we opened, customers flooded in, none giving me a second glance. Relieved, I focused on my duties, gaining confidence as the day progressed. By closing time around 5, I felt at ease. On our way home, we grabbed dinner, and back at the house, Mom handed me a bag containing a dance leotard. Curious, I asked her about it. "You're slightly overweight for your size, so I thought you might want to join me at my aerobics class. It's good exercise and can help you shed those extra pounds." My initial impulse was to decline, but I took the bag to my room and began changing. Upon opening it, I found purple tights and a pink unitard. After struggling with my appearance in the outfit, I decided to conceal certain aspects, adjusting myself before putting everything back on. Despite a noticeable bulge, I felt passable, though the prospect of getting sweaty in a gym concerned me, fearing my makeup would melt off. Despite my reservations, I agreed, already having taken a leap beyond reason. Surprisingly, I found I didn't mind the experience and secretly enjoyed not feeling like a nerd. Determined to improve my appearance, I decided to give it a try. The bag also contained a pair of jeans, which I squeezed into, highlighting my curves. Rejoining Mom in a simple top and flats, we spent the evening watching television without a word exchanged about my attire. The following day, I wore the jeans to work and once again encountered no issues. Upon arriving home, Mom instructed me to change into my leotards and grab my gym shoes for my first aerobics class. At the class, I swapped shoes and shed my skirt and blouse, joining Mom in a group session. The workout proved much more challenging than anticipated. During a brief break, as Mom and I sat on the floor, the woman known for her disruptive behavior at our shop approached. "I see you followed my suggestion, Mary. Having a boy around can be quite disruptive." Mom blushed slightly before responding. "This is Janet. She'll be joining me at the shop from now on." The woman greeted me briefly before returning to her seat. I remained silent, leaving Mom to handle the interaction. Another hour passed with step-ups, step-backs, bending right and left. Rather than changing there, I opted to don the skirt and top before heading home with Mom. The next morning, eager to flaunt my newfound chest, I chose a short summer sheath dress with thin shoulder straps, a flared skirt, and a fitted bodice. I paired it with a pink bra featuring extra padding, enhancing my curves. Despite running late after styling my hair and applying makeup, Mom simply smiled upon seeing me. For another month, things continued in the same vein. During this period, I mastered the art of styling my own hair and applying makeup flawlessly, even venturing into nail polish territory. Thanks to aerobics classes, my weight dropped to the mid-120s, and my hair gained another inch or so in length. Mom and I indulged in takeout from a nearby restaurant daily, with me usually calling in our order, anticipating a short wait before picking it up. However, on this particular day, as I prepared to leave, a waiter named Brian unexpectedly delivered our lunches. I knew he harbored feelings for me, his lingering gaze and hesitant attempts at conversation were telling. Now, he stood before me, nervously stuttering before finally mustering the courage to ask me out to a show on Saturday night. His apprehension puzzled me. Though still uncertain about myself, I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, realizing that dressing as a girl had transformed me. No longer did I resemble a lost soul, I was a girl now. As Brian awaited my response, I saw no reason to decline his invitation. After all, I'd spent the last 6 weeks embracing my femininity at home. So, I accepted and provided him with our address. Upon returning home, I informed Mom about the invitation, half expecting some words of caution. However, all she said was she wanted to meet him before I left the house. As Saturday approached, my nerves intensified. I dressed in a skirt and blouse for the date, slipped on my loafers, and was ready by 7 sharp, a few minutes before his arrival. Brian was polite, Mom amused, and I was jittery as we left the house. Throughout the evening, he catered to my every need, even those I wasn't aware of. Then, as we stood in front of my house upon returning, he kissed me, not on the lips, but on the chin. After a second attempt, he got it right. I dashed into the house, leaving him alone outside. Whether it was impulse or desire, I'll never be certain, but I allowed him to kiss me, and to my surprise, I didn't mind at all. As I lay in bed that night, his taste lingering on my lips, I pondered if something had shifted within me. Deep down, I think I knew, but I wasn't ready to admit it, not even to myself. I relished every aspect of being a girl, the makeup, the gleaming red nails, the clothes, and the way people reacted to me. It was a stark departure from before, and I embraced it wholeheartedly. For the first time, someone wanted to be with me simply because of who I was, and they were my age. It was invigorating. By the time I woke up the next morning, wearing a skirt no longer felt like a uniform. If this was to be my path, I was eager to embrace it. Whenever I got dressed, if I wore a skirt or dress, I never made a big deal about hiding things, simply because it didn't matter. Only when I wore shorts or slacks did I fold myself back and out of the way. That day I wore a nice little sundress, and tucked myself. Mom, while letting me select a few things from the store, never really pushed me to get better, act more feminine, or anything like that. She helped me when I needed it, then left me alone. But she began to refer to me by the name Janet all of the time now, even at home. When I went out with Brian, she was a normal mother of a normal teenage girl, and acted that way. All of the other changes, like mannerisms, how I walked, and so on seemed to come to me as the days went by. I also got used to having a feminine chest. After a while they grew warm to the touch, and as I got used to them, I could sense whenever one of them brushed up against something. They're not real, of course, but so close now that I thought of them that way. Other than skinny hips and my manhood, I looked like a girl now. The aerobics has done wonders for my waistline. I'm down to a 24-inch waist now. I have about 7 weeks before school starts back up, and even though I have not mentioned it to Mom, I think she knows that I could attend as Janet with no problem at all, and I'm even thinking about it. Except of course for my records, I think I could manage it easily now. Brian and I went out twice more, each time to a show. He was less scared while I was more confident. On our third date he drove to the park, down by the pond, and stopped the car. I halfway expected it, and did not protest as he pulled me closer, then touched his lips to mine. There was a lot of panting and gasping, some minor groping, but neither of us ventured into forbidden territory, leaving both of us wanting more yet knowing we could not. By the time I got home I was convinced that I could not return to being plain old Taylor. Now I am a vibrant young girl with a boyfriend. People smiled at me, took me for what I seemed to be, and I liked every bit of it. In the morning, as Mom and I sat across the table drinking coffee, I told her that I was going back to school as a girl. You could say that I was stunned when she told me she already knew that. She left the table for a moment, returning with a sheaf of papers, put them on the table, and shoved them at me. I read them, saw that my middle name would be Lynn. Janet Lynn. I liked the sound of it, looked up at her, saw her nodding her head yes, and quickly signed them. Now that we've sorted that out, perhaps it's time to address the matter of your beard. I believe Jerry can suggest someone. I'll give her a call and kick things off for you. Regarding the rest, it seems silicone forms will have to suffice for the time being. Sound good? Sure, Mom. I had no clue how she planned to handle my return to school, but I trusted her arrangements and went along with it. While tidying up the dishes, Brian dropped by. With Mom's approval, he and I went out for ice cream. To my utter surprise, during our outing, he presented me with his class ring. The warmth of it in my hand felt overwhelming, but I clenched my fist around it firmly. An hour later, he escorted me home, where I proudly displayed the ring to Mom before stringing it onto a delicate gold chain and wearing it around my neck. The ruby red stones sparkled in the light, imbuing me with a sense of femininity. I now had a boyfriend. It was a completely new experience for me. I hadn't even dated anyone, regardless of gender, before Brian came along. Mom remained silent as I buzzed around the house with excitement all afternoon, but she broached the topic at dinner later on. You're aware that Brian likes you, but do you understand that he now expects certain things from you, things you weren't doing before? Such as? The moment the words escaped my lips, I grasped her meaning, though she proceeded to delve into exhaustive detail about what he desired, typical of boys his age, and what she anticipated from me. It all sounded absurd because there was no conceivable way I could become pregnant, not in a million years. Yet, she elaborated on the lengths girls may go to for boys, a notion that left me feeling nauseated. All men, especially around Brian's age, once they become attached to a girl, they start to believe they possess us. It's ingrained in them, Janet. Men naturally feel this way, and even if Brian isn't aware of it or doesn't fully understand it, he'll anticipate you to cater to him. What's even more troubling is that us women often comply because attachment is what defines our existence, and having a man, or a boyfriend, is perceived as a mark of success as a woman. That's why so many of us yield to men. We loathe the idea of letting go, seeing it as a failure. I expect you to treat him with kindness, Janet, but I don't expect you to become an easy target. Do you understand? I understood. The idea of fulfilling the expectations she outlined for Brian felt, well, unsettling, to say the least. Regardless, I couldn't imagine myself ever engaging in such behavior. Thus, my purity would remain intact. I conveyed this to Mom, only to be met with laughter. The days rushed past as the start of school drew nearer. On the first day, Mom accompanied me to the administration building. She presented them with my name change documents, signed by a judge, which sent them into a frenzy. Mrs. Hagan, a long-standing staff member at the school since its construction in 1907, hurried into the office and returned with the principal. He glanced at me, then at Mom, and finally at the papers. Given my transformed appearance, he hesitated to believe it until Mom confirmed its authenticity. Then she placed the papers for my co-op work on his desk. Since I would only be attending 3 morning classes, he instructed Mrs. Hagan to admit me and update all records, every last one, to reflect my new name and status. With a handshake, he handed me a small card containing my class schedule. I left for class, while Mom lingered in the office for further discussion with the principal. I entered my first class, English, and took my assigned seat. While I recognized all the kids, they were oblivious to my familiarity with them. Aside from a few girls I'd seen in the shop, no one acknowledged me or showed any sign of recognition. Just as I was leaving for the day, on my way to the shop, Brian found me and promptly introduced me to his friends, proclaiming that we were a couple, before I had to depart. His actions left me feeling embarrassed until I recalled Mom's words. He was publicly asserting his claim over me. Upon reaching the shop, I shared the incident with Mom, and we both chuckled about it. It took about a week for me to become sufficiently known at school to receive an invitation to a party. Angela, an acquaintance from the shop, invited me over to her house, suggesting I bring Brian along. I hesitated, but Mom reassured me it was fine. For the party, I opted for a simple black sheath dress. Brian picked me up, and we drove over to Annie's house. It was a small party, just 8 couples, and we were all paired off already. Brian and I danced, nibbled at the buffet, and talked to the other kids. In all my life, I had never been invited to a party. Now, as soon as I become a girl, I'm invited. Brian held me tightly as we danced, then he managed to maneuver me into the shadows, and kissed me. Not lightly, but with passion. I tasted his tongue and let him grope a little, because, well, I had my hands on his buns. The more it went on, the more heated I became, and I could feel him, hard against my leg. I broke away, giggled, then ran back to the party and the safety of the lights. But he wasn't done yet. On the way home he parked the car and drew me closer to him, and I gave in to him. Every sensation I always imagined came true. My entire body was tingling in delight as I felt his hands slide up and cup my chest. I knew he had it, I just didn't feel it, which all of a sudden I wanted to. I wanted to feel the warm caress of his hand on my smooth skin, his gentle squeezing of my chest, and more. I wanted to have my own chest, a wider, rounded butt of my own. Not a few ounces of silicone and foam rubber. Then it happened. He put my hand right on his hardness. My every instinct was to yank my hand away, but I found myself wanting to please him, and left my hand there, not moving. He put his hand over mine and made a familiar motion. I looked into his eyes just as he kissed me, and I kept up the motion until I felt him shudder. Smiling inside, I pulled away and told him to take me home. I had crossed the line now, and liked it. In the morning, I'm going to tell Mom I want to have my own feminine chest. Mom didn't seem overly surprised when I disclosed my situation. She simply made a note to schedule a doctor's appointment. While I headed to school, Mom went to open the shop. 2 days later, I found myself facing the doctor who had delivered me. Although he had delivered me as a boy, his uncertainty was evident until I stood before him, undressed and exposed. From the shoulders up, I resembled a teenage girl, from there down, a boy. He quickly grasped the reason for our visit, and after a thorough examination, I was prescribed hormones and administered a shot. The following day, I found myself in the girls' restroom when Annie walked in. "I heard you hooked up with Brian the other night." "What?" "Well, he's not openly talking about it, or at least I haven't heard him, but he's definitely acting cocky today." "I didn't." "I swear, I'll confront him." "Easy, Janet. Boys often boast." "Not with me. I'm not like that." I stormed out of the room and spotted Brian conversing with some of his friends. One of them noticed my approach and swiftly departed, sensing the impending conflict. Grabbing Brian's arm, we engaged in a brief, heated exchange, or rather, I spoke while he listened. Yet, that infuriating grin remained plastered on his face. Frustrated beyond measure, I ripped the chain from around my neck and thrust it, along with the ring, into his hand. With tears welling in my eyes, I hurried to my next class, consumed by anger. I didn't care who witnessed my fury. It seemed all the girls understood why, but as usual, the guys remained oblivious. Their minds preoccupied with conquests situated somewhere below their belts. Goodness. I'm starting to think like a girl now. It took me 2 days to regain my composure. I had exerted more effort than any of them could ever understand just to embody the girl they knew as Janet. Most girls take their appearance for granted, but for me, shaving every day without fail was a meticulous routine. While they embraced their natural shapes, I relied on clothing, foam rubber, and silicone to achieve a similar silhouette. Then along came Brian, who made me feel so inherently feminine that I dared to be vulnerable with him. He had transported me to a realm where my femininity blossomed, allowing me to revel in a sense of completeness and desirability. Yet, he boasted about our intimacy to his friends, falsely claiming I had been intimate with him. In a twisted way, I suppose I should be thankful. After all, his claim implied that I was truly a girl, didn't it? And if I'm a girl, then I'm not a boy, which is what I'm desperately trying to conceal anyway. Most of the boys were eager to believe that one of their own had succeeded in winning my affections, eagerly buying into the falsehood, hoping they might be next, with anyone. I was livid with Brian, disheartened that he had violated something so intensely personal to me, and more so, frustrated that I couldn't fulfill his baseless claims. Yes, I'm now undergoing treatment to align my body with my gender identity, but Brian dealt a significant blow to my self-esteem, and I have no desire to relive that experience. Angela caught up with me after the next class. "Brian was despicable, Janet, and you have every right to end things with him, which I hope you did." "I already have, Angela." "Want him?" "He's all yours." "It's not about that, Janet. I want you to meet someone. He's a nice guy, a bit shy, but quite the catch." "Who?" "Lucasson, my brother's friend. They both attend Northern. When they went their separate ways after graduation, they remained there, while I ended up here. Ken already has a girlfriend and isn't looking for anyone else at their school. He suggested I introduce you to Lucas, perhaps for a double date with Brian and me. As long as you ensure Brian understands I'm involved with someone else, then yes." Angela arranged my first blind date, and she was spot on about Lucasson. He was reserved, quite handsome, and exceedingly polite. Angela mentioned that Lucasson had never dated a girl more than twice. Mom found him charming when he arrived to pick me up, and I noticed he wasn't as timid around her. I genuinely enjoyed our time together, but after Brian's betrayal, I wasn't willing to repeat the same mistake. Angela and Brian went out of their way to ensure it was a delightful evening, and as he walked me to my door, Lucasen asked me out for the following night. I accepted, and he bid me good night with a kiss. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on how my life had changed. As a boy, I wasn't exactly ignored, but I never received this much attention or was invited to so many social events. Now, with everyone assuming I'm a girl, my life has been turned upside down. Brian made me realize how much I enjoyed being perceived as a girl, only to tarnish it with his malicious rumor. Cutting ties with him reinforced what everyone believed, and now, I found myself agreeing with them. Our principal is aware, of course, but he tacitly acknowledged the situation and hasn't mentioned it since. He even greets me by name when passing me in the halls. In the morning, I mustered the courage to express to Mom my desire for my own chest. I anticipated her dismissing the idea due to financial constraints, but to my surprise, she nodded in agreement and promised to arrange a doctor's appointment for me. As I continued to see Lucasen regularly, my body underwent changes induced by hormone shots. Slowly, I began to develop my own chest and wider hips, while my skin softened and all body hair vanished. Embracing these changes, I started wearing lower-cut dresses and relished every moment of it. Angela and I grew exceptionally close, akin to sisters, sharing almost everything, except for one aspect of my identity that I kept concealed. There was no reason for her to know the truth about me. Meanwhile, our shop's sales flourished to the extent that we needed more space, prompting us to expand into the adjacent vacant shop. This expansion allowed us to introduce a line of clothing in larger sizes, including lingerie. It was then that I noticed a significant number of male customers, and I couldn't shake the feeling that many of the garments they purchased would never adorn the body of a biological female. Leveraging my unique perspective, I guided them toward items I knew would suit their needs. Plain old tailor, that's how I defined myself way back when. Now, as I stand here in front of the mirror looking at my reflection, I know that time is well past me now. The dress I have on is form-fitting, low-cut without straps. The bodice hugs me tightly while the skirt flares out, held there by the 3 petticoats I have on. My chest is swelling against the thin material, held in place by the satin corselet I have on. Lucas will be here shortly to take me to the graduation prom, and while I have not said anything to anyone, I'm sure that Mom knows that I will probably do something for Lucasen tonight, something that only girls do for their men. Even though my own femininity is not in question by anyone else, this is the last hurdle for me. I will graduate within a month, and a few months later I will finish my transition to the woman I really am. Then Lucas will help me complete myself when I take him to my bed. Tonight will be but a hint of what is in store for him then.